Hello, Scott. Hi, my name is Emily Ford. I'm going to be walking you through your options from a business analytics perspective to grow your customer base and improve your wine sales for the upcoming fiscal year. Let's get started. Here are the key elements of the data that we used in the sample testing performed and my recommendations based on the data moving forward. We will discuss the strategies you have proposed and how to maximize the return from those strategies. First, I wanted to make myself as familiar as possible with the data that you provided in order to come to the best solution. Let's address your present concerns. Yearly, you produce 2,000 cases of Chardonnay. As you know, your sales of this wine have decreased by 2 to 5% year over year from the years 2015 to 2020. This indicates that there is a disconnect between your product, the Chelsea Winery brand, and your customer base. Scott, I understand your concerns and I am willing to provide detailed solutions to help you better understand the existing market and interpret the available data so we can increase your customer base and resulting revenue. Because both of your strategies regarding providing client awareness on the Wine Enthusiast website, I wanted to start there with a small background on how the Wine Enthusiast website works as it pertains to my business analysis. If your wine were to be selected for review by the Wine Enthusiast website, this would provide immediate connection with a broad client base, inevitably growing your brand. Bring your attention to the right side of the slide where I have provided a graphic example of the main Wine Enthusiast website page. First, you will see under the Wine Enthusiast title that they have many additional platforms for the exposure of their brand. In a similar fashion, something as simple as creating a Chelsea Winery Instagram account would allow your customer base to connect with your brand and grow extensively. Second, the Wine Enthusiast site allows customers and wineries to conveniently search and sort through a number of wine selections approved by the wine experts. The site provides vast navigation to wines that meet the customer's needs in many categories. This information also provides you with the insight into the wine enthusiast criteria and the demands of the customers. Overall, you can see the Wine Enthusiast website is very user-friendly, allowing customers to find your brand quickly and will make connecting with your customers way more efficient. With the customer-facing layout and functionality of the Wine Enthusiast website in mind, let's dive into our first strategy for increasing customer base and revenue. Your main goal here is for the Chelsea Winery's Chardonnay to be approved for advertisement on the Wine Enthusiast website so that you can join other high-ranking wineries and gain insight about your client's wine and overall marketing strategy. Once you have been approved for review on the Wine Enthusiast website, not only will you gain access to valuable data about your customer base and the wine market, you will also be advertised across the Wine Enthusiast's many channels of marketing and advertising. Wine Enthusiast doesn't just provide wine reviews, they allow the customer to immerse themselves in the wine culture as much as they desire. They provide recipes, holiday packages, and can elevate your wine in a new level. Even the site provides a window into their services. Wine Enthusiast Company is a predominant multi-channel marketer of a growing line of products that satisfies, informs, enriches, and entertains, and inspires. Wine Enthusiast has already cataloged over 300 million wine reviews. The experts behind the site know exactly what kind of wine and winery they want to review. They rate your submitted wine and consider existing analytics about your customer base as part of their rating/scoring method. Especially, Wine Enthusiast knows that reviewing your wine will benefit their platform. With that in mind, we need to consider the Chelsea's Winery brand success as much as the quantity of the wine you produce. In order to be selected for review on the Wine Enthusiast website, your current wine will have to score at least an 80 out of a 100-point scale to be considered. This is little room for error with the strict rating requirements, so I want to make sure you put your best foot forward when you submit your wine for review. With the challenge of passing the review board's high bar in mind, let's discuss your natural second strategy. Creating a new wine that caters to the preferences of the wine enthusiast customers in your local Washington region. Producing a new line of wine with the wine enthusiast customer base in mind could increase your chances of being selected for the wine enthusiast website and magazine. A new wine that matches the standards of the existing high score wines has the potential to avoid a lower rating that your existing line could incur due to the past 5-year declines in sale. Scott, I love how open you are to expanding the Chelsea Winery brand identity. With your bold creativity in mind, we first want to determine which wine category would receive the best rating in your region. We compared regional Washington wines that were rated by the Wine Enthusiast Expert Board in red, white, rosé, red blend, and white blend categories. First, I calculated the average rating of the regional wines in each of those categories. As you can see, the chart is labeled wine category versus average points. Then we compared the average ratings to identify the wine with the highest rating average score. As you look at the graph, you can see the red blend received 90 points out of 100 overall. This shows that the red blend seems to receive the best rating in your region. To compare the specific calculated averages of each category, I provided a pivot table showing you the exact number of average points versus wine category, and the grand total average score of all the wines in your region was 88.9 average points. This is great insight in knowing the market of the customers regarding any of the wines rated on the Wine Enthusiast website. We determined that red blends receive the highest average rating for the experts on the Wine Enthusiast website. This high-scoring wine is an attractive answer to your second strategy of releasing a new product line in order to give Chelsea Winery the best chance of being reviewed by the Wine Enthusiast Board. That said, we wanted to consider the price points of each of the established categories as an additional analytic criteria for evaluating our best response to your second strategy. So which wine category has the highest average price? First, we calculated the average price of the regional wine in each of those categories. As you can see, the chart is labeled wine category versus average price. Then we compared the resulting average prices to identify the wine with the highest average price. As you look at the graph, you can see the red blend also has the highest average price for wines in your region. To compare the specifics calculated average price of each category, I provided a pivot table showing you the exact number calculated on average price versus average category, and the grand total average price of the wines in your region was $32.42. Some change, of course. This is great insight in knowing the market of customers regarding any of the wines rated on the Wine Enthusiast website, and the price points customers consider appropriate for the high-rated wine in your area. After comparing the average prices and rating of various wine categories and landing on red blends as the highest yielding wine, I wanted to analyze your wine options from a different angle. Instead of comparing categories of wine, I wanted to compare customer preferences and tasting notes. First, I conducted a VLOOKUP to create an internal dictionary on terms from the various wine descriptions that were classified wine tasting notes as either fruity or non-fruity. I then applied a heteroscedastic t-test to access the probability of accuracy that would be determined from our sample data set of wines from the Wine Enthusiast website. Essentially, this is a test that sampled a two-tailed distribution with an unequal variance, or an unequal number of wines classified in each of our defined categories. Using this test, my second comparison between the average prices of wine with fruity versus non-fruity tasting notes. This is a similar method of appraisal that I applied to the various wine categories, but I used the t-test to ensure that the sample set comparison was accurate. In business analytics jargon, the confidence interval was at 95%. 95% sure that the test would accept our hypothesis, and the goal was to receive a p-value less than 0.05. The p-value of this sample set was 0.002, which is considerably small. This means the sample set tested provided is very accurate result. On average, non-fruity wine costs $24.81 more than fruity wine. Note that this sample of fruity wine tested greatly exceeds the sample of non-fruity wine. For every non-fruity wine tasted, there was a 140.5 wine that was fruity. On our data indication, there was a considerably more fruity wines on the market in the tested region than non-fruity wines. When interpreting this analysis, you could see non-fruity wine is more profitable with a higher price point, but I suggest further analysis on the cost of production for these wines. I then applied the same t-test for my first comparison, but assessed the difference between the average points of wine with fruity versus non-fruity tasting notes. This is a similar method of appraisal that I applied to the various wine categories. In this test, the p-value was 6.3 times 10 to the 23rd power. This result is incredibly accurate. On average, non-fruity wine receives 5 additional points than fruity wine. As you can see, non-fruity wine is more popular with a higher average point rating. Now, I previously determined that non-fruity wines have a higher average rating and price. I would like to ensure this is the case in the red blend category that the previous data seems to recommend. To answer my new question about tasting notes in red blends, I performed a very similar t-test to my other 2 tests of tasting notes. First, I narrowed the search category to only include red blend wines. Then I conducted the same VLOOKUP dictionary search of fruity versus non-fruity wines. I next applied a new heteroscedastic t-test to assess the probability of accuracy that could be determined from our sample dataset of red wine blends. Using my t-test, I conducted a new comparison between the average prices of only red blend wines with fruity versus non-fruity tasting notes. On average, non-fruity wine receives 3 additional points than fruity wine. Note that the sample size of fruity wine tested greatly exceeds the sample size of non-fruity wine. For every non-fruity wine tested, there are 128.2 fruity wines. Our data indicates that there are considerably more fruity wines on the market in the testing region than non-fruity wines. The interpretation would be non-fruity red blends wine is more profitable with a higher price point. Using my t-test, I assessed the difference between the average points of wine of only red blend wines with fruity versus non-fruity tasting notes. On average, non-fruity wine costs $23.17 more than fruity wine. To interpret this analysis, you would find non-fruity wine blends is more popular with a higher average point rating. If you want the best chance of passing the wine enthusiast expert reviews, this is a perfect candidate for your new product line. Which wine category should Scott consider producing next and why? I recommend Scott introduces red blends to his selection of wine to improve his chances of being selected by the wine enthusiast website. Should the wine have notes of fruit? Why or why not? I recommend Scott introducing a new line with non-fruity notes. Next step for his research to advance his decision-making, I suggest collecting an equal value sample size for a more accurate comparison of tasting notes. I fully recommend looking into a non-fruity red blend wine data as you conduct further testing. In my opinion, both of your strategies are legitimate and rational ideas to create exposure and awareness for your product. Ideally, you will attempt both. What you should be concerned with when producing a new wine is your financial situation. Make sure if you choose the strategy that you can be financially responsible. With that being said, there are many free platforms to bring awareness to your winery. Examples: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and more. Here are some examples of errors that might decrease the accuracy when conducting further tests. Be sure to keep them in mind. As stated, wines tested are limited to your specific region. I wanted to share my overall breakdown of each step that was performed, helping me to arrive at a final recommendations. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this case study. I hope my findings help you come to a concrete conclusion.